Let's get started. It's 1:30, so let's get going. So I'm going to continue to discuss auditory system. I began on Wednesday, and I did not finish the material on last handout, so we'll continue to talk about from here on. Last time we talked about how is a sound converted into neural firing. And after finish this, I believe Tia has posted my next lecture notes. That will continue that into Monday. And then there will be one more, and I'll finish by the end. Okay. And also today by noon, you should have seen a posting of homework that's due next week. The homework I gave today, Friday. This is homework to exercise you in how to simulate the spectrum that I talked about a couple of weeks ago when I gave my initial lectures. How do you simulate a spectrum from a uniform distribution? And if you have issues, you should talk to TA or go back to the slides that I discussed this early on. Okay, this is a very useful exercise for you to understand the spectrum analysis. Now I'll give you one more homework later on about the auditory system and other things. Okay. I hope you guys have been catching up with the homework every Friday. And homework, as we said at the beginning, the contents of homework is a part of a lecture for the entire part of the course. So we expect you know whatever we ask you to do in the homework in addition to lecture. All of this will be covered by exam. And the first exam is coming in 2-3 weeks. Yeah, it's soon. And I have warned you every year, for some reason, either we are too harsh or some of you take it too easily. Yes, go ahead.
Do you know when we'll be getting grades back on our homeworks?
Soon. Yeah, well, Tia told me it's soon. But you know, we need some time to catch up with TS. Yeah, so you should get it soon. Yeah, homework and answers will post them. Now, some of you might notice. Yes, go ahead.
What time is the exam?
Exam is in the evening.
But like what time?
Have we decided exam time? Usually about 7 to 9. We give it 2 hours usually. It's in the evening, early evening. And now, if you look at the schedule we give, most times, you know, there are 3 exams. The first 2 are on lecture days on Monday, I believe, in the evening, so that we can give you 2 hours. Because in the classroom here, you can only get about an hour maximum. And in the past, when we give exam in class time, the major complaint from students that you didn't have enough time. You could have finished all the problem if you have time. So then we change the exam mode in the evening. And, but during the day, there are still lectures. But each exam will tell you which lectures include. The final exam, I believe, is during the day. That's in the final period. Okay, so it's in the evening. I think either 6 to 8 or 7 to 9.
I'll also say if anyone has a conflict vis-a-vis the exam, please email the list. There's going to be a second exam that's administered sort of earlier in the day.
Yeah.
Wait, so what time is it? 6 to 8 to 7?
It's going to be more than an hour.
It's about 2 hours. Usually we give 2 hours. I would say it's somewhere between 6 and 9 o'clock. Either 6 to 8 or 7 to 9. Depends on classroom, but it should not be earlier than 6 o'clock. And it shouldn't be later. It might be, in my recollection, than 9 o'clock. It's early evening if we can secure a classroom. Okay. I was going to say, I didn't finish my sentence earlier, that every year when I had the first exam, the fraction, a rather large fraction of students in the class who did it poorly. It always bothers us. I mean, the first exam, you'll see, I mean, exams are not terribly difficult, but it's very demanding. This is a message I give every year, I continue to give, especially some of your friends who are not here. Okay, I think for those of you, I learned over the years the relationship, and someone told me about the relationship between students' performance, and you know, there's a high correlation. There's a very high statistical significant correlation of your attendance to the classroom and your performance in exam and R1. And there's also second correlation. Tell me if this is wrong, especially someone sitting back, that the distance from you to this stage and to the back, there's also correlation. You know, we have data. We actually have data. But anyway, but what I'm saying is that the first exam, don't take lightly. And I say this because I'm a course director. I want to mention that before I forgot. These classes, as you've seen by now, we're getting faster and faster. Okay, and some of your friends might think, well, you know, I just study overnight. It does not work. It is for this class. If you want to see, I'm going to skip all the lectures. You know, I look at videos sometime when I have time. I'm in good mood. The night before exam, I'm going to go through all of them. Does not work. Okay, it really does not work. This is not an exam by memorization only, and it does require you to understand the material. So I have to warn you, and particularly your friends, if you care them, tell them that don't wait till one, because every year we have a number of students that did really poorly in exam one. And we would like to avoid that from happening again. And in a student wake up after that, but you know, one exam is one exam. It's quite significant. So catch up the trend before it's run away from you. So today, I'm going to go a little faster. And I think last time, first on Wednesday, taking my time to motivate you how interesting this is. So we discussed how the sound is converted into neural firing, and assume that you take time to understand this, and you should be able to describe it in your own words to your friends, to your parents, to anyone who has reasonable education, how this happens. Today, then we'll talk about how is the frequency selectivity generated. What I mean is that when we hear the sound, whether it's a low sound, middle frequency, high frequency, we know it. But how do you know this? This is actually not in the ear, it's all in the ear. So this is one of the most fundamental properties of the auditory system. Now, cochlear, which we spent quite a bit of time talking about last time, if you unwind it, it's like a tube, right? It's like, you know, if I take the big cochlear, it's like this huge one. This is a tube. And within this is a hollow. And we talked about last time, but there are hair cells on top of a basal membrane. But if you unwind it, which I plotted here, for you to see, and it has a very interesting properties that when cochlear vibrate because of the vibration of sound, remember last time we used the example of 1 kHz sinusoidal vibration, that it converted from an eardrum through those three pieces of bones, eventually stapes, the last one on the round over window, and then the whole thing vibrate. So that vibration generates vibration on the basal membrane. But depends on frequency. The maximum vibration occur, for example, one part here. This is distance from stapes. That is distance from this point. Go on. Okay. So this part we call base. This part we call apex. Apex is top. The top of here. Base is the bottom of the cochlear. Okay. And what it turns out is the following, as I show here. 7 position along here. Position 1, closest to base, it has the maximum vibration at 1,600 hertz. Okay. As you move towards the apex, for example, when you reach number 6, the maximum frequency is 50 hertz. So that means if you vibrate the cochlear with low frequency, 50 hertz, 100 hertz, you will see maximum vibration near the apex. Whereas if you vibrate the cochlear with high frequency, let's say 1,000, 2,000 hertz or higher, you will see maximum vibration towards here. So that's essentially cochlear serve as, in our engineer's term, Fourier transformer. Okay, so you remember that what you learn in the signal systems that give you a signals, you do Fourier transform. You decompose this into multiple band of frequency from low to high. This is essentially nature's creation for the frequency decomposition. Okay, with a low frequency near the apex and high frequency near the base, and arrange here in a systematic way. And this is organization we call tonotopical organization, or we say cochlear is tonotopically organized. By tonotopically organized, it means it's organized by frequency. Now, someone now may have to think about this question. What if I give multiple sound? Like if I push your fingers on pianos, place a couple things together. Well, that's essentially is equivalent to excite several of them at the same time. That's something we'll talk about in a few minutes. So the alignment here is as if there's a piano keyboard here, you place your finger on one key and the lower frequency side. It's most excited here, middle frequency here, high frequency here. Okay. So the frequency selectivity of our auditory system of our ear is entirely dependent on the mechanical vibration property of the basal membrane. Now, remember from the last lecture, we talked about along the basal membrane, we have hair cells. We have one row of inner hair cells, 3 rows of outer hair cells. Inner hair cell is the one that's responsible for hearing. Okay. So if I take inner hair cell from here or from here, I put them on a dish and a microscope. There's no difference. So inner hair cell itself does not generate frequency. It is a vibration property of the basal memory that gives that frequency selectivity. Now, of course, inner hair cell here connect the auditory nerve into the brain. So brain know it's low frequency because it's connected to here. Brain know it's high frequency is connected to here. But brain itself has no knowledge, does not generate frequency selectivity. Hair cell does not generate frequency selectivity. This is a very, very important concept. Okay. Now, if we were to measure the auditory nerve that are connected to the hair cell, so we say that all of this is lined up with the hair cells. Each of them connect the auditory nerve. If we record from one auditory nerve here, measure its recipient field or tuning curve that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, then you will see that near the top of here, this place, the auditory nerve connect to this color here would have lower frequency than here. Here has higher frequency. So from here, you see the most sensitive frequency change from low to mid to high. Okay. So now from here forward, every single neuron in auditory system knows the frequency because of their original connection to the particular position in the cochlear. Okay. So that's how the frequency activity is decided. So here's another plot showing you if you were to measure auditory nerve from these 6 positions. This is the top, this is the bottom. Their tuning curve will be like this. Each individual one, and that's essentially the last plot. So that's something we call tonotopical organization by frequency. Yes?
In the previous graph, what is SBO?
Oh, which one? Last one?
Yeah, on the y-axis.
Oh, this one? Yeah, this SBO is sound level. Sound level, remember last on Wednesday I showed one slides. Sound level from very faint, very loud. But SBO is a unit that's normalized to the fixed air pressure level. It's a dB we use to describe how loud they sound. But it's a relative, it's normalized by constant. But you can think about it, it's just intensity. So when we say it's 50 dB or 100 dB, 100 dB is much, much louder than 50 dB. So it's a unit to measure loudness of sound. Okay, that's SBO. SBO stands for sound pressure level, but it's a unit that's normalized by a constant that I explained in another slide. Okay, so this is the organization we call tonotopical organization. Now there's something else that we talked about last time. Remember, when the hair cell, this is a hair bundle, this inner hair cell, it sits on the basal membrane. When the sinusoidal wave goes up and down, and this goes up and down, but it's on top of this, there's a tectorial memory to push this. So when it goes up, it goes to push this way, goes down, push this way. So sinusoidal vibration up and down, now is translated to hair bundle, this way, that way. This way, channel open, you have action potential generate. This way is closed, right? So only half of the cycle is closed. Now the consequence of that is here. This actually is interesting because you see this is sinusoidal that we use as an example. And this is one of these auditory nerve, the neurons fire. And this is post-stimulus histogram that we discussed a couple of weeks ago when I gave my first initial lectures. And what you see here is that because the channel only open on one direction but not another, you see from here go 360 degrees, and only part of half of the cycle there's spikes, another half is no. That's because the hair cell other half cycle has not opening. Okay, so this is a property now that's turned out to be very useful. That is, when you stimulate ear with sinusoid, record from one of the auditory nerve fibers, the action potential is periodic. And this property is we call phase locking that we introduced earlier. Okay. Now, this is important for you to know that if the hair cell changes back either way, you will not see this. However, this property you can only see this when this frequency is low. Okay, so we'll visit that point later. So for auditory nerve that are connected to the cochlear, these are two most important basic properties. One's regarding the frequency, one's regarding time. With this phase locking, you can read stimulus period or frequency from a firing. Okay, from firing. Now, that's here, auditory nerve. So we'll go back to anatomy. So we just talked about cochlear nuclei, and the auditory nerve here. And the auditory nerve is the first structure in the auditory system where information is encoded by action potential. And we're going to do a lab next week to test action potential properties. And this is many places you will see why we care about action potential, because from here on all the way into the rest of the brain is the only action potential that I carry. Okay. Then from here on, signal goes to next stage. It's called cochlear nuclei. Again, all the structure has a red square. It's a structure that you should pay attention to understand. But again, I'm not going to ask you to fill blank in the exam. But you need to know when we mention cochlear nuclear, at least you know where it is here. Now, so here, signal continue to go to next structure called superior olive, which we'll also discuss its function later on, and go to next structure called inferior colliculus. Now, remember, we have two sides of ear. So here, this only show you the one side of the input from one ear. There's another one here. Okay. Now, until superior olive, signal that in neuron receive come from one ear. Okay. And beginning in this structure, the neurons here receive from this side. Now, in neural anatomy, we call the inputs on the same side called ipsilateral. From our side, called contralateral. Okay, and that means from here on, all the neurons here receive inputs from our side because you can duplicate another figure here. Okay, so that's a very important thing to note because these inputs from both ears turn to be crucial for us to tell the location of the sound. Okay, now if we continue this pathway, then next place from inferior colliculus come here is called thalamus. Part of this thalamus called a medial genetic complex, but just think about thalamus. The thalamus, you're here again. There's auditory parts, there's the visual parts, there's some sensory parts. Okay, from the thalamus, the signal continues to go into the place called a primary auditory cortex, behind our ear, and then we'll follow this up. Okay, so that's the pathway from the ear all the way to the brain. Okay, now what happens in the brain? So we talk about the in auditory nerve. Yes.
So where did the last two slides, like where do they connect?
Oh, they connect here. So the here is here. So the end of last slides. I mean, I wish they plot here. So here goes up here. Next, this goes to thalamus.
Okay.
So this goes to here. Okay, so two slides can be on top of each other. Okay, thank you. Now in the cortex, we jump a couple stages now. We jump into primary auditory cortex. That is here, right here. The first stage where auditory information reaches the cortex. Cortex is big. Then there are secondary, third, fourth, blah blah blah. You know, we haven't gotten there yet. So in neuron here, if you look at the neuron in this part, towards the head, front of the head called rostral. Neuron here would respond to most sensitive to 500 hertz, 2000, 8000, 16 hertz. So it's also arranged from low to high frequency in one direction. We call it tonal topologization. But this selectivity, just we said earlier, is because these neurons all the way through our pathway is connected to the apex of cochlear. The apex of cochlear maximize they respond to maximize to low frequency, whereas this is connected to here. So if I were to take out the one neuron here, put on the dishes on the microscope, ask you what is the frequency, you cannot tell because a neuron from here, here, they're all the same. The reason we can measure frequency selectivity from neuron is because it has inputs connected all the way to the apex of a cochlear. So here's an interesting question now. Suppose you do an experiment where you reverse the connection of this neuron from cochlear. Cochlear generates a frequency from low to high. If you route these inputs here and this inputs here, what's going to happen to here? Reverse. So brain, essentially, this is one message we're going to get to you again and again. Our brain, in a way, we can hear something. Brain never directly hear anything. Brain hears through the ear. And that hearing in the brain can be triggered, can be tricked, can be manipulated. This is the reason why there are situations like hallucination, where there's no inputs from the ear and people hear because the other sources got into here. Okay. But the simple fact here I want to point out is that this frequency organization in the primary auditory cortex is entirely due to the connectivity of this through here, this through all the way to the cochlear, which is the tone type organization. The frequency selectivity starts from here. Okay, so that's how the frequency generates. Now, of course, the signal does not stop at the primary auditory cortex. From primary auditory cortex, it goes to secondary auditory cortex, then goes to the even higher area called the Wernicke area. And so we'll leave those for now, and we'll come back and revisit that later on. Okay. So that's the second question, how the frequency selectivity generate. It's fairly straightforward, but keep in mind that that's the basis of our hearing for us to tell, understand speech, music, all of that. Okay. And the next question we want to talk about is how is the, I think I missed the words here, how is the time represented by neuron firing? I think I missed the word here in the slides. So you have seen this, yes?
So if you consider hearing loss with age,
yes.
Would that affect be seen in the apex of the...
Yes, apex, good question. Right, so hearing, the age-related hearing loss start from high frequency. That means, so people actually can say, so that is mean as you get older, 30 years from now, 40 years from now, the hair cell near the apex of the hair cell will begin to die and progressively towards the base. It's not entirely clear why we begin to lose the hair cells and the apex rather than base. But that's a fact that we know. And because of the loss of hair cell, then you loss of hearing. So progressively, the hearing goes from higher. I mean, it would actually won't take much for you to figure out. If you have grandparents who are in their 70s or 80s, you might notice that if you play certain sound from an iPhone, from an iPad, so far song, they will not hear. One thing, the first time I realized is many years ago, my parents come to visit me. I took them to my lab home there. I was very proud of showing them. Here's how we do auditory experiment. We have all the equipment there. Some of you have been to my lab. We have frequency generator. I just play, say here how we test the auditory neuron. They're curious. So I play sound to them. They're like 15K. They cannot hear. I look at them, they say, they cannot hear. I realized that, I say, really? There's a lot of sound here. I realized that their hearing loss is probably below up to about, below 15K now. 15K is too high. So when we age, that all of us, unfortunately, we will have hearing loss. So when you next time talk to your parents or grandparents, be a little bit patient, because when you say something, say what? You notice people doing this very often when older people, when you say something you think is very, very clear, they say, what? I mean, actually they didn't hear. Most times they don't hear the high frequency of the low frequency is okay. Yes?
Why does that happen? So like if the hair cells are dying near
their apex,
then why can you not hear the high frequencies?
I'm sorry, got it wrong. Then it's a base.
Okay.
Yeah, so sorry, I got it wrong. I'm glad you caught it. It's definitely high frequency that we lose as we age. So it is a base. Sorry, it's not an apex. It's base.
Okay.
Yeah, you got it. So high frequency for sure. It's base. Yeah. The reason why we lose that is not entirely clear. Why is that? But it's a systematic. It's a systematic shift. So the better you treat your ear, the longer you last. What I mean, the better you treat your ear is that don't go to loud concert. Don't go to the shooting range often. Fire guns without protection. And actually, there's one thing all of you probably knows. I mean, I do the same. So in the last about 10 years, earbud earphone become very popular, right? Everyone. This is actually, in terms of audition hearing, this is not healthy at all. Because when we put an earbud in your ear, you actually broadcast too much energy into your ear. There was actually a study looking through high school kids in the last 10-some years. There's a systematic elevation of a hearing threshold in current generation of high school kids compared 20 years ago, because the widespread use of earbud. So I don't know, whether people have not made much noise of this. And so the point is that, often I was in the train and I was in a bus, I was sitting next somebody had earbud on their ear, and I can even hear the sound. So that's so loud. So since you mentioned these things, and I would say if you have friends, family members who are younger than you, you are too late. If you're younger than you, tell them don't stick this too often, too close, too loud. Absolutely, this is not. The old traditional earphone that a pad, loose it on your ear is actually better because the energy can leak. They're very tight today. I like earbud. When I travel, I have a multiple. Some of them I notice is very tight. Those, if you use it, don't play too loud. Don't play loud. Okay. It will carry your hair so. So face locking is property we talked about before. Now we know for auditory neurons, this is caused by half cycle reactivation of the hair cell opening. And then we also talk about how do you quantify this and for hair cell. Now, but face locking you only see its low frequency. So if I were to give you an auditory neuron firing, ask you to quantify either synchronization index or vector strength, I might have missed this slide for my handout, but I'll give you another one. So this is what you find. So the amount of face locking is best at the low frequency. As the frequency becomes higher and higher, the face locking in auditory nerve become lower and lower, eventually disappear about 4 kHz. So let me go back again. So when I told you last on Wednesday, when you have a sinusoidal vibration, I purposely use example of 1,000 Hertz. That's 1,000 Hertz is right here, where the hair cell can go back and forth, back, open, close, open, close. That creates a face locking in the auditory nerve that connect to this. But if you do this in 5,000 Hertz, 10,000 Hertz, hair cell cannot go that fast enough. Therefore, if you look at the, let's say 5,000 Hertz, hair cells located at the 5,000 Hertz location in the basal membrane, it play 5,000 Hertz tone. The auditory nerve connector will show no face locking. Therefore, if you take that action potential trend to plot a period histogram, what are you going to see? You're going to see a flat line. Okay. So the reason that we see that curve is that if you quantify here, that's quantification give it to you. So our face locking is best at about 1,000 Hertz and below, and get worse and worse, eventually disappear. Okay. Why we need face locking, and we'll touch upon this later on. It turns out people understand that face locking are useful for one to determine which left and right sound come from. We'll talk about. For two, that people believe it helps us to appreciate the subtleties in music, very subtleties in different instruments. So therefore, our sensitivity to those properties above here would disappear. Now, this is a phase locking curve. This is the absolute limit of auditory system, how fast our spike firing can replicate the signal. Now, if you repeat this measurement in next stage, called a Cock nuclei, that's here. So you look at this curve goes to this way. What does it mean? That means the ability of a neuron in next stage, Cock nuclei, to follow or phase lock to sinusoidal is worse, right? Now you can only follow, it's about several hundred hertz, but 2 kilohertz is completely gone. Okay, why is this? There's a long story, I'll give you a short answer. That is, when inputs goes from here to here, there's a temporal integration. Some of you who have come to the pre-lab that I gave yesterday and today, and this morning, that we mentioned one of the experiments, the number 4 experiment in next week's experiment, is for you to test the temporal integration. A consequence of temporal integration is loss of phase locking precision. Okay, because when you stimulate this, that's why that experiment was put there in your SBE II experiment. So when you stimulate a nerve with a very strong signal called superterrestrial signal, you stimulate one, there's a spike. Stimulate another one, a spike. You can imagine there's good phase locking. But if you stimulate a nerve with a subterrestrial event input by itself, no phase locking, you have stimulated 1, 2, 3, 4 together, that gets one spike. Now you know this one spike cannot phase lock to all of them, right? That's where how this can get lost. But then later on, maybe on Monday we'll talk about the consequence of this, because now you can ask, I just told you after this, there's inferior colliculus thalamus cortex. If you're going to repeat this in each stage, guess what happened? If you do the same measurement of phase locking at the cortex, where that curve is? Which side of it? This side, left side or right side? Left. You can only go left. So you'll see that later on, that if it goes so much left, it's about here. And that's become an interesting scientific question that we're going to discuss at this time. Okay? So how is the time represented by neuron firing? And in the auditory system, that is represented by phase locking. Okay. So phase locking is described by curve. Yes?
Is that degradation in phase locking ability just due to the differential speed of the action potential versus like synaptic?
Yeah, it's due to primarily three factors. One is temporal integration from an auditory nerve to here. Second is due to convergence of many auditory nerve into one fibers. When you have convergence there, even though every fiber has phase locking, but it's not exact phase. When you add them together, wash out. Third is due to inhibition. Actually, that was part of my doctoral thesis. I built a model to simulate this. That's why it's happening. So it's inevitable. So when you move on cross stage, this curve can only move towards the left, can never move to right. And that you can prove later on. If you learn more mathematics, you can prove in terms of information theory, you can predict it. There's no way you cannot improve phase locking. You can only either maintain or degenerate. Yeah. Now the last question for this slide, for this lecture slides is, how is a speech sound represented by neuron firing? So I'll use 2 examples to walk you through. The example I used so far is the pure tone, 1,000 hertz sinusoidal. How is this pure tone sinusoidal is counter neuron firing? We discuss from frequency to phase locking, all of that. That's what we need to know. The next example is slightly more difficult, more complicated. That is a speech. The simplest speech we can talk about is here, a vowel. So now we're going to talk about use this as the example, see how the auditory system transforms it into presentation. If you understand both, how the tone is processed, how speech sound processed, you get a good grasp on the fundamental properties of the cortex. Then more complex things like music and other things can come along. Okay, so what is the speech? So if we take the simplest sound element, phonemes in speech, that is a vowel. This exists English, Chinese, and Japanese, so all the language you got it here. So for English vowel, like this one, so if you say, okay, if you repeat it, it's steady state, okay? And if you record from microphone, vowelology here, plot that here is this. Then you can do the Fourier transform. Then that's spectrum of this. Now, here's a quick question for you. So for first one, for this one, you can see there are two structures. One of them is very fast changing structure, right? Another one is most, if you follow my laser pointer, it's more slowly changing, okay? And in terms of signal processing, we call this slowly changing structure, we call it envelope. Have you guys heard about this, signal system? Envelope. Have you guys heard about the concept of a carrier and envelope for signal processing? Okay. Oh, never mind for now. Okay. But if you convert this into spectrum, spectrum is like this. But why this spectrum is discrete? Why is discrete? Why is it not continuous? So this is a real spectrum of this. It's not what people draw this. Why is that? Anyone has hands up? Why this is discrete? Why this is not a continuous curve? Anyone remember from your signal system? Yeah?
Those are the frequencies of the sinusoids that when you add them up together, get the original signal and time.
But I'm asking you is if you don't know this, I will give you this signal, ask you predict what the spectrum is. Would you predict this from signal to here? Anyone? Is this wrong? This is actually spectrum of that signal. So when you guys took a signal system, when did you guys take a signal system? Last semester? Okay. Right. So if you have signal, time waveforms, time signal, that is periodic. What's the spectrum? Is spectrum continuous or discrete? Discrete, yes, that's it. Because this, I give you a demo, I say, it is periodic, right? When you have a periodic signal, spectrum is discrete. Now, further question is that, then you look, this discrete spectrum, there's one component here, second component, third, fourth one. Is there any relationship between these components, their intervals with this? So, what is this component, first component? What does it correspond to in this waveform? Is period, right? So this is a period, and 1 over that is this first frequency. And the second frequency is twice, third 3 times. And the interval between these are 1 over here. That's all in the signal system, okay? Now, why this is interesting here, this gets to something we're going to come back again and again, is how the speech sound is produced. So when we produce a sound like okay, this is, I'm going to give you this now. On Monday, we're going to elaborate more. So we push our air through from a lung. We push air through vocal tract here. We vibrate. Then depends on how we configure our mouth and the tongue, so far so on. We produce or ah. Okay. In this process, we produce something called a pitch. That is a vibration here, and that's periodicity here. Then depends on how we configure our mouth, our upper laryngeal space. We produce the vowel, and the vowel is characterized by the peak. So this spectrum also has an envelope. It's not plot here. If it's like here, goes up, goes down, goes up and down, up and down. So those peaks in the spectrum are called formants. Formants are most important features of vowels. So you can differentiate this vowel from another vowel simply by the location of the formants. 2, at most 3 formants. Okay, and the formants here is not related to the period here, but the separation of this component here is directly related to a period here. Okay, that is how the speech sound is described. So what we're going to do now is look at these 2 representation of what is the spectrum valve representation, spectral representation. See how these things are represented in calculus, in alternative to the brain. This is the goal, okay? So here's how to go. So I say that the format is very important. If you plot the format, the first two format, F1 versus F2, for all the English vowels, F1 versus F2. And this is a elliptic is here, tell you each vowel. You know, vowel, the we just use it is here. And there's R and U, so far so on. Now, each symbol means one individual. If we take all of us in this room, say, everyone say and I calculate format, F1 and F2 of everyone, all of us will fall into here. Okay, because of individual variation. So this is the basis for us, for another human being, or for a machine, to tell whether vowel is or E or U. Okay, so auditory system must be able to represent this, if we were able to tell this. So this experiment is done here by two professors here in our department, Mersax and Eric Young. I don't know how many of you have met Eric Young. Some of you met Eric Young. He just retired 2 years ago. Mersax was our former chair and retired about 7, 8 years ago, mid-10 years ago. Both of them taught this class many years ago. So they worked, they did in 1979 here, just School of Medicine in the Tudor building. It's one of the most important work that they define how the auditory nerve represents a vowel. Okay, so here's the experiment they did. So they took a vowel. So you can see the date. This is, wow, 78. How many years ago? 40 years ago. This is before you guys were born in this classroom. This is the date of experiment. So they take this vowel, that we just saw. That's the spectrum of this. Now, they did not plot as a line here, but this is the same discrete, no, this is I'm sorry, this is okay? So they took this vowel. So here's the experiment did it. They stick electrode, microelectrode in auditory nerve fibers of a cat. And then they presented the vowel many times, Every time we present, the auditory nerve fibers would fire, ba 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 ba. Then using the methods I discussed with you earlier, they can calculate average firing rate of auditory nerve to this valve. If you do 100 times, each of them has half a second long. I mean, you can calculate too. So what it did is the following. Then they plot. In this example, it's E. They plot the firing rate versus the frequency, sensitivity, characteristic frequency. So every neuron in auditory system, like a reciprocal field is like this. There's the most sensitive frequency. This is called characteristic frequency. So one dot here is the one auditory nerve fibers. For that auditory nerve fibers, they say the present vowel 100 times, they calculate firing rate. The firing rate is here, so that generates one start. Then they record hundreds of auditory nerve fibers and present the same vowel many times for each. Then they come up with this plot. Okay, and the line here is average. So what does it say here is the following. So this is a total firing rate. Remember, each nerve has a spontaneous firing. If you do nothing, they're still firing. They say vowel, then they fire a little bit more. Okay, so in order to see the neurons firing specifically tied up to the vowel, after this, they subtract the spontaneous firing from this, then they obtain this driving rate here. And then they normalize this further because some neuron can fire maximum to 100 spikes per second, some to 50. After they do all this calculation, they come up with this normalized firing rate versus the frequency. And this profile, you can see F1 here, F2 here. So this was actually first evidence that if you just look at the auditory nerve of cats, listen to a human vowel, you could recover that vowel spectrum from the population of neurons firing here. Okay. Now it turns out neurons, auditory neurons, how many of we have in our year? We have about 30,000. Cats has about 50,000. Every neuron has different spontaneous firing. Okay. And the some neuron only spontaneously, that means you put no stimulus, fire few spikes per second, some fire higher. So if you separate those neurons by two classes, one is called low spontaneous firing. Spontaneous firing rate is less than 20 spikes per second, versus high spontaneous firing. There are two classes here. This class of neurons with high spontaneous firing, if you stimulate the neurons with different sound level. So what I'm doing now is different. So I'll take a vowel and I play vowel at different sound level. We say higher, 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 kind of mimic. So neurons firing will continue to increase. And sometimes it's saturated. So this is interesting because it shows the format. But it has a problem. Problem is that if you increase the firing rate, neuron fire more and more, eventually everyone will be firing. Okay, so that's what I'm showing here. So this firing rate-based representation is fine at the low sound level. This is 32 dB, 44 dB, so far higher, higher. So you can see two formats here, maybe here, but then you begin to lose them, 74, 84 dB. So when you can no longer recover format, you cannot represent this speech sound now. 70, 80 dB is about a little bit louder than normal conversation. Okay. Now, but that's for all the fibers. But if you take out the subset of auditory nerve fibers, that's no spontaneous nerve fibers, they can maintain this at higher sound level. So another way to represent here now is that, so I'm going to go through here, I will summarize this, is that when you give the vowel like and you record the auditory nerves, because the vowel has a time structure this, then the nerve fibers also have phase locking to the time structure and the vowel. So if you reconstruct the period histogram of a response to vowel for these auditory nerve fibers tuned to 410 Hertz, you have this, and so far so on. And that phase locking reflects the temporal structure in the vowel. So if you calculate something else, but not average firing rate now, but something else that represents the phase locking here, that's what I'm showing in this formula. I'll let you go to read here later on. Okay, this will be your own reading. Then you can calculate the measure that is based on the phase locking, not the firing rate. And that measure, we call this average localized synchronized rate. That measure is more resistant to different sound level. Okay, so this is one example showing phase locking can be used to represent the speech sound at high sound level when firing rate become less useful. Okay, so this is an example showing you if you use single firing phase locking based representation, you can represent these vowels across all the sound levels. Okay, this is two examples. Okay, so here are some suggested readings. Now you should read. This is two classical papers by two professors in our department, and here is a textbook for you to read. And I know I went through this part very quickly, but I want you to spend some time to read about it. And I still have a few minutes left, and let me begin a couple more slides before we run out. I'll finish before. Oops, what happened? Okay, so let me continue for this one. So after the auditory nerve, and signal goes from here. So what do we talk about? Auditory nerve, coccynuclei, and all the way goes up above on both sides. This is summary of different levels that you can read. So there are for the next block of discussions. So I want you to understand appreciate one concept that I will use multiple example to represent. So far, everything we'll talk about is a representation of physical properties of a sound, being its frequency, being its frequency or time structure. There are two properties here that we consider are computational principles of the central nervous system. I'm going to go through it here and come back to revisit it. The first property is that the central nervous system neurons can extract or compute stimulus information not explicitly encoded by sensory receptors. Second is that central nervous system neurons transform isomorphic representation of sensory stimuli, especially in the peripheral, to non-isomorphic. Now, this sounds awkward to you, but bear with me now. Okay. So what is the central nervous system? So in auditory system, anything beginning after coccygeal nuclei is considered central nervous system. And below here are peripheral nervous system. So auditory nerve is a peripheral system. Okay. So here are the three questions that I like to discuss. One is, how does the auditory system represent the time varying signals? And how does the auditory system represent the spatial locations? And how does the auditory system process pitch and harmonicity? And we can cover first one today, and I will raise something here. So here is a question that I already bring up several times now. That is, the sound are moving. Any sound that we produce is like a river, water in the river is moving all the time. So if I produce a speech sound, for example, today is Friday. Okay. So there's a slow component. Today is Friday. Okay. That called a syllable, and it's something like this. That's very slow. Then, because I'm speaking this, I'm a male speaker, so I have a pitch about 120 some hertz. If you replace me by a female speaker, say same thing, today is Friday, that pitch higher. That information is encoded in about several hundred hertz range. There's a pitch and a gender. The last information is the finest information is that if you take two male speakers side by side, everyone has individual characters. Okay, that's called fine structure dialogue. Okay, speaker identity, that is greater than 500 hertz. So if you, in terms of time, 500 hertz is how much? Is 2 milliseconds. And 50 hertz is 20 milliseconds. And this is, tens of milliseconds. So the point is the following. When your auditory system listen to this sentence, today is a Friday. Since you guys have listened to my voice many times now, if I suddenly turn off lights, I grab someone here, each of us say, today is Friday. I ask you, say, which one is Dr. Wang? You will be able to tell, or what Dr. Wang say. All right, you say, oh, the one on the right is Dr. Wang, and he is male. He says, today is Friday. Okay. In order to achieve this, which we do every moment when we hear a call. So whenever you call your parents, friends, someone you know, you pick up one phone. Within one word, you know who you are talking to, right? So all of that requires your auditory system to process time from a few milliseconds to tens and hundreds milliseconds. Now, here's a question for engineers. If you're going to design a computer to do this, to reach the task, how's it going to do it? Suppose, say, I want to design a computer program through a phone, from a laptop, microphone. That's going to capture all of the information. How would you design? What's your design criteria? All the information I want to capture. What would you consider? First thing, you have to consider how do you digitize the signal, and how fast you digitize signal, right? This is, signal processing. So in order to capture everything that need to be captured, you want to make sure you can digitize it fast enough to capture the faster signals. Okay, fast signal here is, let's say, 1 millisecond. Then you know the Nyquist limit. So you have to sample at least how many? 2,000, 3,000 hertz, 10,000 hertz, okay? But this is how the computer does. In fact, this is how our laptop or cell phone, all of it does this. But what I'm going to tell you with more example here is that this is not how the auditory system does. Auditory system doesn't do what a computer do, okay? Because in order to capture the fastest component, you sample the highest sampling rate that allow you to do this. You would oversample all of this. Now, computer is fast now, so people don't worry about the energy. But brain cares about energy. Okay, so we talk about phase locking, and phase locking only goes to about 2-3 milliseconds. Okay, now how does our system does this? So I'm going to finish here and continue this one. So this is the slides you saw earlier. Phase locking is a measure of auditory neurons' ability to follow time varying signals. Okay, if a signal goes like this, action potential follow. You see capture. If a signal goes like this, auditory nerve firing can go this to capture. Then it goes really fast. There's nothing can happen. Okay, so that ability is plotted here. Auditory nerve here, coccynuclei here. If you move to inferior colliculus is here, thalamus is here, cortex is here. So this is what I mentioned earlier. By the time you reach auditory cortex, the neuron ability to synchronize or phase lock to stimulus is about 100 hertz. This is a kilohertz, 0.1 kilo, 100 hertz. Okay, what does 100 hertz mean? That means if I give you, does anyone know what is sampling rate of a CD? You guys may not use CD now, but some of you knows. So what is sampling rate of MP3? Yeah, 44 sample per kilo. For CD is 44.1 or 44.105, something like that, 44.1 hertz. But what I'm going to tell you is in the brain, when you reach the cortex or close to where we perceive the sound, neurons phase locking is about 100 hertz. This actually is troubling because the engineer will never predict the brain would do this, because if you only sample at 100 hertz, if I give you CD or MP3, you filter out any component faster than 100 hertz. What is that? That's garbage, right? So this is the experiment that we did. Actually, your first example, homework I gave you to do has everything to do with this, okay? So this is the homework you did. And the first one I give it to you. I ask you to generate collect trends with increasing speed. And then determine when your transition from discrete to continuous. Does anyone remember? Can anyone tell me what's your transition point? Yeah?
43.
How much?
43 hertz.
43 hertz. Is that similar to what the people got? Okay, this is about right there. So somewhere around here, your perception changes from discrete to continuous. But all the stimulus are discontinuous. So we did this experiment in monkeys many years ago. Oops, that signal, why it doesn't come out? Oops. All right, there's a plot here. I don't know why it didn't show up now. Okay, lost it. So I'm going to tell you this now, and I should make up this. Yeah. So we did the same experiment in monkeys where we have an electrode in their brain. And look at the phase locking of a cortical neuron when we play this stimuli. It turns out in the monkey brain, phase locking stop about the same play frequency where our transition, your perception translates from discrete to continuous. So phase locking is correlated with your perception of the discrete events. But what about the events above here? Okay. So we're going to continue discussion on Monday. So I'll stop here now. See you on Monday.